So anyway, Coast Guard fans, I know this is a pretty devastating one to you, but with that being said, we're gonna start from World War One and the creation of the modern Coast Guard in the 1910s. And I know the Coast Guard had this illustrious career dating back all the way to the 1790s and all that good stuff. But we're not gonna do almost 300 years of history with every decade to be involved. I'm even thinking of merging the 1920s and 30s into the interwar years. So there's a possibility that I might go back and do some stuff with it, but for right now, we're going to start with the creation of the modern Coast Guard. I hope this is not a letdown. I think it's actually a very interesting one. And with that being said, we're going to start from the 20th of January 1915. And with that being said, the 20th of January 1915. So on the 20th of January 1915, the United States Revenue Cutter Service and the United States Life Saving Service were merged by the Act of Congress to form the United States Coast Guard. On the day of its creation, the Coast Guard had approximately 255 officers, 3,900 warrant officers and enlisted men manning the headquarters of 17 regional command, 4 depots, an academy, 25 cruiser cutters, 20 harbor cutters, and 280 lifeboat stations. Now with that, World War One and over there. Now the preparations. Prep time. So the United States Coast Guard preparations for the coming war actually started before the declaration of war on the 6th of April 1917. So in late 1916, the Interdepartmental Board on Coastal Communications recommended that telephone communication be improved and brought to a high state of readiness all along the U.S. coastline to include lighthouses and life-saving stations, as well as other government coastal facilities. So sensing the need for aviation, the Coast Guard sent Third Lieutenant Elmer Stone to naval flight training on the 21st of March 1916. Almost a year to the day, on the 22nd of March 1917, the Commandant issued a 12-page manual titled Confidential Order Number 2, Mobilization of the U.S. Coast Guard when required to operate as part of the U.S. Navy. And that's how you get the stigma of the Coast Guard being an asset of the Navy, yep. So now, Germany had already announced a policy of unrestricted submarine warfare on the 30th of January 1917 on all ships trading with its enemies to include the United States of America as well, and included neutral shipping as its target. The U.S. merchant ships sunk before the declaration of war included the SS Hamilton and the SS Housatonic, and 5 others with the loss of 36 American lives. And with that being said, what is Housatonic? Like, what is it really? Anyway, with that being said, declaration of war. So on the 6th of April 1917, with a formal declaration of war, the Coast Guard was transferred to the operational control of the Navy. Dang it, here we go again. All cutters were to report to the nearest Naval District Command and stand by for further orders. All normal operations were suspended with the exception of rescue pending orders from the Navy. So Secretary of the Navy Joseph Daniels directed that although the Coast Guard was then part of the Navy, that most of the administrative details handled by the Coast Guard headquarters will not be changed. Thank you, Joseph. Really appreciate it. Josephus? So at the onset of the war, the Coast Guard consisted of at least 4,000 officers and men, had 23 cruiser cutters, 21 harbor cutters, 272 rescue stations, and 21 cadets at the Coast Guard Academy at Cape May, Maine. I believe at Cape May, could be wrong. The Coast Guard was still in a formative stage of development from the merger of the U.S. Revenue Cutter Service and the U.S. Life Saving Service. Because of this fact, there was not much interaction between the two former entities during the war. Now, this is the real reason why. So a qualified Life Saving Service surfman who wished to transfer to a cutter had to be reduced to an ordinary seaman upon reporting because of a lack of shipboard skills. Because if you didn't know, a surfman was basically, well, the modern day helicopter rescue teams. So basically, the helicopter pilot is the helicopter pilot, and the person in the back is the one that goes diving and rescuing the person. So with that being said, they will have to learn the operational skills of a boat. So that means they have to go in as a fresh recruit, basically. And because of this, the transfers were pretty infrequent as well. There was no chief petty officers in the Coast Guard at this time as well, and the Coast Guard petty officers assigned to the Navy ships often served under less experienced supervisors for less pay. Coast Guard cutters were seen by the Navy as ready assets and were used to fill in for the rapidly expanding Navy at the time. The Navy did recognize Coast Guard officers and petty officers as the experienced mariners that they were, and we are, and often put them on Navy ships to fill in for crew shortages and lack of experience. So, during the war in 1918, twin sisters Genevieve and Lucille Baker of the Naval Coastal Defense Reserve became the first uniformed women to serve in the United States Coast Guard. True story. But now, with that being said, there's one more story, and this happens during World War One, and that is the sinking of the USCGC Tampa, or the United States Coast Guard cutter Tampa. So, during the late afternoon of the 26th of September 1918, USCG Tampa parted company with the convoy HG-107, which she just escorted into the Irish Sea from Gibraltar, ordered to put into Milford Haven, Wales, and proceeded independently towards her destination. No, she proceeded independently towards her destination. At 19:30 or 7:30 that evening, 24-hour clock, as she transited the Bristol Canal, the warship was spotted by UB-91 or Utenboten or underwater boat or German submarine 91. According to the submarine war diaries, the U-boat dived and maneuvered into an attack position, firing one torpedo off the stern tube at 20:15 or 8:15 p.m. from a range of about 550 meters. Minutes later, the torpedo hit Tampa and exploded portside amidship, throwing up a huge luminous column of water. So basically, it hit a through a rack and exploded pretty badly. So big boosh of water, right? So the cutter sank with all hands on deck, included 111 Coast Guard guardsmen, 4 Navy sailors, and 16 passengers, consisting of 11 Royal Navy sailors and 5 Maritime Service Merchant Marines. The sinking of the Tampa was the largest single loss of life for the Coast Guard personnel in World War I. She sank in the Bristol Canal at roughly 50 degrees 40 minutes north, 6 degrees 19 minutes west. With that being said, that was a pretty good one. So anyway, like I said from last time, well, life didn't work out the way you want it, but you know, life is life. If life was all a plan, then you won't call it life, you'll call it plan. Or planif. But it's still kind of disheartening to me because, you know, it's nothing like totally wrong with it. It just has to be checked and managed to the point of, you know, like on and off, you know, you see every couple of months, every couple of years, stuff like that. But I do believe it's a liability issue, especially if it was to drop down. Even if it wasn't from that, if it was even dehydration, it could be still seen and ruled as a heart thing. So I do understand. And I do know, and it's not just a personal, you know, thing that you're sending somebody off to maybe die. It's also probably going to be a legal thing as well, because you did sign off on that person being fit enough and they weren't fit enough. And if they die, that's kind of your responsibility. So I know life doesn't work out, and I know life isn't always fair, but sometimes you got to see the bright side. So I guess I'm going to be a civilian working in the CG, at least try and do that. Might go back to technical school and see if I could get some technical skills to help with that as well. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. So like I said, yeah, that's life. But like I said, and like I tell everybody, you know, I still got a little drive, and even though it's not what I wanted to do, well, yeah, it's kind of what I wanted to do, but it's what I wanted to do, but not in uniform. So with that being said, sometimes you gotta take the good and the bad with it. And with that being said, yeah, so that's pretty much me and that. Yeah, we went 2-0, so I think that's pretty much it. I could try for U.S. Air Force, but the loops and bounds I have to go through to do that, I might as well just be a civilian. And even then, it's still not a guarantee I will get into. So it makes sense to go the easy route and go civilian one time and call it a day. But thank you for being on this journey with me. Thank you for all the ups and downs, and from the 1910s and World War I, to the 1920s and ram runners, to the 1930s and the Great Depression, to the greatest generation of World War II, to the Korean War and Clint Eastwood in the Coast Guard, yep, got a story for that, to the swinging 60s and Vietnam, to the groovy 70s and espionage, to the 1980s and the Mariel boat lift and drug war, to the 1990s and the escalation of a drug war, but also going to a real war in the Gulf, to the 2000s with 9/11 and the Iraq War and something else. Something else. I think the Patriot Act did something with the Coast Guard as well, but we'll see when we get there. From 9/11 onwards, it's going to be a total mystery for me too. So we'll see what the 2010s have to offer. I think the Horizon oil spill is probably going to be there. But with that being said, we'll just have to wait and see. So it's a surprise for me and you. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed. This has been your host with the most, the Coastie that never was. But you know, I know basically most of the stuff. Yeah, I've been practicing. I know my heart condition won't allow me to like. I had to like learn extra, so I had to learn extra so I could just keep up. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. You can type in those coordinates to Google Earth and learn something. And yeah, so 50 degrees, 40 minutes north, 6 degrees, 19 minutes west. Yep, still remembered it. It was not even on the page. Yep, 50 degrees, 40 minutes north, 6 degrees, 19 minutes west. Yep. Cat head donkey, and I'm out of here. Learn something.